YouTube. I'm Dr. Marc Allan Feldman. My campaign is not Marc Allan Feldman for president. My committee is called Votes Not for Sale. I'm going to be talking today about a lot of issues that got touched on with the last talk about new kinds of campaigning and new concepts really in a political campaign. So I've subtitled my talk, A Political Campaign as a Lean Disruptive Startup. So that using some of the concepts from really most modern marketing techniques. Again, my name is Dr. Marc Allan Feldman. I have an MD degree from Johns Hopkins. I also have a master's in health, finance, and management from the School of Public Health. I'm in the I did some part-time management consulting with Arthur Anderson while I was at Hopkins. I was recruited to the Cleveland Clinic in 1998 to head up anesthesiology at the Cole Eye Institute. And then I was recruited into the Libertarian Party of Ohio in 2010. I ran for Attorney General of Ohio, received 3% of the vote, just over 100,000 votes. In terms of my politics, I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. I've never been a Democrat or a Republican. I was a non-voter until I was 50 years old, and when I discovered the Libertarian Party. There's all different kinds and flavors of libertarianism. I call myself a libertarian populist, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later. Now, how I came to be a non-voter, people say, why is it that so many people don't care? It wasn't an issue of not caring. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I knew politicians, and there were really none I would support. I grew up with Vietnam, this fellow Richard Nixon. Watergate was the local news for years during my formative years. Read my lips, no new taxes, and of course I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Monica Lewinsky. I had a hobby of connecting computers to TV sets. I would make my own DVR so I could skip the commercials. It was a really great hobby. And in 2008, I had an idea. They had just announced that they were going to phase out the analog signals, and they were going to put making television signals digital. So everyone was going to have to get a box to put on top of their old TV. So I had an idea that why not make that box an open source computer that could work as a DVR, kind of like a TiVo, but it would be owned by the viewer and not by some other company. I called it Open Ivo or Open Evo, kind of as an open source TiVo alternative. I presented this idea to a friend of mine who's a technology analyst in DC, and he said that whenever you have anything new, chances are very good that it will not work. But if it does work, it should be worth about $25 billion a year. So it seemed like it was worth looking at. The idea was to have a new kind of advertising that you would watch the television just from your whatever source you normally would watch it, but the box would actually add in commercials that it would download from the internet for things that you're likely to want to buy, or the commercials that you'd want to see, either because they'd be entertaining or because they're a product that you're interested in. Very similar to what Google does when putting ads on websites. Well, one of the things I determined, one of my quotes that I came up with myself, it's easy to see the moon, it's relatively difficult to get there. So I determined I read a lot about lean startups and new technology, and I never invested a lot of money. I think over 3 years I did a total of about $25,000, which is about what my colleagues spend on golf and health clubs, and certainly less than sailboats. But but I had recruited some excellent consultants. We had several meetings. I had a software team, and we actually came up with a prototype. And the problem was getting people to use it, and we could not get that usability. So that I stopped my interest in it. Meanwhile, because the market is so controlled by the cable and satellite companies over the air, which is what this is really best for, is getting to be a smaller and smaller market. So I put that on the back burner, but it was a great learning experience for me, and it gave me a chance to do a lot of reading about startup marketing and disruptive processes. It was in 2012 also that my son Alec, our son Alec, died from cancer at age 16. He was a poet and wrote a fair amount of poetry, and one theme that was in there was to live life without fear. And he was always very courageous and a loving child, and all my efforts really are in his loving memory. Also in 2012, there was a presidential election. During that time, Barack Obama got 66 million votes. Mitt Romney got 60 million votes. Gary Johnson, the best of the three candidates by far, got 1 million votes. But what impressed me was that there were 100 million eligible voters who did not vote. So when I'm looking at the people I want to reach out to, it's not disgruntled Democrats or Republicans, it's these 100 million people who just don't vote. We can call them the party of non-voters. We really don't know too much about these people. If you go to polls where they poll what people are interested, what issues people are interested in, how they feel about things, when you read the fine print, it usually starts off, we did a telephone interview of 1,200 likely voters. Or we knocked on the doors of 700 likely voters. The polling agencies are paid by the candidates to go where the money is, which is people who vote. So most of what we know are about the likely voters, not the people who don't generally vote. But Pew did do at least one study fairly recently on non-voters and did a publication called The Party of Non-Voters. So we found that these people are heavily minority. Latinos are about 18% of the population and about 35% of the non-voters. They tend to be lower educated, most with high school diploma or less, and they tend to be lower income with a median family income of $30,000 a year. So this is probably nobody in this room. And of course, probably everybody in this room is very interested and connected and active politically. So these, I always kind of get a kick when people say, well, the way I feel about it, if it were me, this is what I would want to say. Well, what we're talking about is 100 million people who are not like you and me. Although maybe more like what I was 10 or 15 years ago. I'm pushing the wrong button. Okay. So, So my campaign, how is my campaign different? Well, as I said, it's called Votes Not for Sale. I accept no corporate funding, no PAC funding. Individual contributions are limited to a total of $5 per person. I do not accept more than $5 from anybody, and I do not take cash, only credit cards and only through the website. And there's reasons for this. So I'll go through my top 10. Reason number 10, I can keep my job. I am a busy physician. People ask me, how do you have time to campaign? I say, well, most candidates spend 95% of their time raising money and talking to donors. And if I'm not doing that, that means instead of spending 1 hour a week on my message, I can spend 3 hours a week on my message and do more than the other candidates and still work during the day. And actually, I guess at the time of our founders, that was the way it used to be. People still kept their jobs and just were not career politicians. Number 9, it empowers people. As I said, I call myself a libertarian populist. That means I'm less about limited government and more about unlimited individuals. Cool. Which means that my feeling is that if we take away power from government just to give it to major corporations to control us, we have not increased freedom. So I always try to put the focus back on the individual, and by having a $5 maximum, it shows that I'm not just running against the Democrats and the Republicans, I'm also running against Walmart, Microsoft, Apple, and every other big company that wants to control us. So anyone with $5 to donate can be my largest donor, and anyone who I speak with knows I'm not speaking with them to get money from them, which makes it easier at work. Otherwise, if people know you're a candidate, they really avoid you. Number 8, it leverages technology. The new technology is campaign database management. This is the software systems that helped Barack Obama get into office. His probably cost millions. I have something which is much more robust and starts off at $20 a month. I use the NationBuilder system. It's called a voter relationship management system. It accepts my donation. It files my FEC forms for me, keeps track of anybody who does a like on Facebook, retweets a tweet, or mentions my name on social networks, keeps track of donors. It can generate walking lists. It's very, very powerful. Now, I didn't know anything about this, so I needed to get a NationBuilder expert, a political consultant. What I found is that there's basically 2 varieties of political consultants, liberal Democratic ones and conservative Republican ones. And if you look in the yellow pages for political consultants interested in getting money out of politics, that is not a section. And it's always interesting talking to them. What I'm doing is such a paradigm shift that the political consultants, even if the more experience they have, the less they can get it, because they really they just look at the world in different ways. So I spoke with the NationBuilder headquarters and to see whether they might have anyone they could recommend, maybe from the nonprofit organizations or from a religious organization. And they said, well, Dr. Feldman, you seem pretty technologically savvy. Why don't you do our free NationBuilder training program? And so the price was right. And I became a certified NationBuilder expert, as has Darcy, my new intern. Number 7, it leverages grassroots. Studies have shown that all the expensive stuff like television, radio, and other mass media is not nearly as successful as personal phone calls, knocking on doors, and shaking hands. Now, with a national, thank you. With a national campaign, there's a limited, you can do that. However, you can do the same kind of marketing that, pyramid marketing that Amway or anybody else does. The problem when you have state chairs and county chairs and going on down the line is keeping track of everybody and keeping your message clear and not playing telephone tag with your message. But this is where the NationBuilder program goes in. It maintains profiles on every activist in your organization and it says who reports to who, what is on whose to-do list, when is it done, keeps track of everything and can make adjustments automatically. So this is really going to be a whole new kind of a grassroots campaign. And a grassroots on steroids. Okay, number 6. It can make billions of dollars a liability. The Democrats and Republicans are each raising $2 billion. Everyone knows they're getting it from special interests, that they're not going to be responsive to the people. And people ask me, how can you compete with the Democrats and Republicans when they're raising billions of dollars? Well, if we can make these huge amounts of money a liability, then we don't have to compete with it. We can just be different from it. And I think that it's certainly going to be in all the news about how this is going to be the most expensive this is going to be the most expensive campaign anybody had under any circumstances in the history of the world. So you can't have a story like that without talking about third-party candidates who has a $5 maximum donation. Number 5, libertarianism as disruptive innovation. So this goes to an author, Clayton Christensen, who wrote 2 books, The Innovator's Dilemma and The Innovator's Solution, where he talks about how large corporations have trouble and really cannot compete with very small startups when it comes to true disruptive innovation. So he draws a contrast between what's called incremental innovation, something which is better than everything that's on the market, but it doesn't change the market. A disruptive innovation is something that makes you have to throw everything away, and to get this, you have to get something new. So, for instance, back when CD players were the thing, people remember CD players, I think. If you came out with a new CD player that was better than anything on the market, what you would want to do is market it to the high-end users, people who always need to get the latest, greatest thing, and you want to charge a high price for it. Then you want to, then later you would, lower the price to get it to more people for volume. On the other hand, if you have a brand new thing like an MP3 player, it doesn't necessarily sound better, but it's totally different from the market. It's going to be much less expensive. It's going to be more convenient. It's going to have a lot of factors to it. But if people already have thousands of dollars invested in CDs, they're not going to want to buy something new, which doesn't sound better, just have another gadget when they have to replace all their music. So who do you market it to? You market it to people who don't have any music player, and you sell it as inexpensively as possible. And when you're developing it, you don't want to give it all the bells and whistles. You want to have minimal marketable options on it, minimal marketable features, so you can sell it cheaply, and you don't go after market share. This is a trick with a disruptive startup. A lot of times people think, this is so great, I want to get investors, get millions of dollars, make a lot of these things, put them out there, advertise them. Well, the problem is you're going to be losing money initially, and if you don't know how long it's going to take, if you run out of money, you have to close. On the other hand, if you start off slow and you get profitable by controlling your costs from the get-go, then there's no limit to how long you can be in the marketplace. You can wait till your message gets heard. So the key factors are keeping costs very low and just expecting lower revenue. That's how I chose $5, is I actually calculated, if I run my campaign the way I want to, how much would this cost, assuming that only 2% of people donate? I would say, I think calculated out about $1. So $5 is actually plenty. So then you want to target the marketing efforts to low-end users who are ignored by the incumbents. So that you want to market to the current non-users, in other words, the non-voters. This advice politically means that, going at low cost to non-voters, and one of the best things is that there's no lesser of two evils problem here. These are people who haven't been voting for anybody. They're not worried that voting for a libertarian means they're voting for a Democrat or a Republican. Number 4, I can represent we the people. I'm representing people and not special interests. I don't have any need to recruit special interests for intensive fundraising. Now, there's nothing wrong with going to groups like Second Amendment advocates, marriage equality, marijuana legalization. They call them the 3 Gs of guns, gays, and ganja. And this is what Our American Initiative tries to do. And there's nothing wrong with it, but by instead of trying to get resources and funds and activists from these groups and then taking care of them after the election, it's better, it's incrementally better, but I'm looking at doing something disruptive, doing something very different. By not doing fundraising, I can focus on much broader messages of cutting spending, balancing the budget, and getting big money out of political campaigns. And number 3, it demonstrates integrity. So that, because anyone can say they're for smaller government and more freedom. One of the few really good lines I like from Jon Stewart is, he mentioned libertarians. He said, they say they want smaller government, more freedom, cutting the budget, cutting spending. He says, what's the difference between them and the Republicans? Oh, they actually want to do that. But this makes it credible, because it's hard to be credible when you're spending all your time. How can you say that you want to cut government spending, but you're spending all your time at fundraisers trying to raise money? So when I tell people I have a $5 cap on contributions, when they're not people in the Libertarian Party, their response is, "Wow, I like that." Number 2, in a sense, it makes me a serious candidate. People say, are you a serious candidate? Well, I'm not taking money from special interests, so I don't have to pay back special interest favors. And when it has been said, as our former chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that the number 1 security threat in the United States is our national debt. How can you say you're a serious candidate if you don't have a plan to address our number 1 security threat? It's not ISIS. So I can say that I can balance the budget on day 1. I don't know if people think it's hard to balance the budget. It's not hard. I'm going to give you my 30-second plan to balance the budget. There's already budget proposals by the Democrats to cut the deficit in half by cutting a lot of the money that goes to the special interests that support Republicans. The Republicans also have a large number of deficit reduction proposals that target the special interests that support the Democrats. If you just say, okay, let's be bipartisan, I'll take those cuts and those cuts, put them together, and you actually have a balanced budget. The problem is not fiscal, the problem is political. And finally, number one reason, it is a winning strategy. I was at the International Students for Liberty conference, and I was speaking with the guy at the next table who was one of the leaders of the Republican Liberty Coalition. So he was a very friendly guy. He used to work for the Gary Johnson campaign, I think one of the governor campaigns. Well, we were having a nice discussion about why the other one could not possibly win. And I explained to him that, yeah, I know that you like Rand Paul, but the fact is that, yes, Rand Paul is the best of the Republicans. I said that Angelo Bruno was the best and nicest of all of the mafia dons. He was well known because he refused to traffic in narcotics. He would only do gambling and prostitution. He refused to murder anybody. He would stick with extortion and bribery. But the problem was when the rest of the organization realized he was getting in the way of making money, he was eliminated. Rand Paul, please note. You can have principles, but when they go against the lifeblood of your organization, which is money, you will not be successful. And no matter, they'll let him get to 5%, 7%, try to attract young people. But the Republican Party is addicted to money, just as the Democratic Party is addicted to money. That's one of the big reasons. I say that what we don't need is an election, what we need is an intervention. So he then explained to me why libertarians could not possibly win. He said, yes, people are getting more and more interested in liberty, but the fact is, whatever liberty issue that start to get traction with the Libertarian Party, whether it's marriage equality, marijuana, civil asset forfeiture, police brutality, whatever it is, if it starts getting 3%, 5% interest from the public, the Republican Party can jump on it louder and wider and bigger than anything that you could imagine and look like they invented it. And there's no way the Libertarian Party can ever succeed. So I asked him, well, what about my issue of getting money out of politics with a $5 maximum? Suppose that gets 3%, 5%, 7% approval. Do you think the Republican Party could get in front of that? He thought for a second and very quietly said, no, I don't think so.